I want to talk about specialization in software engineering. It's important that you pick your kind of like core language and framework and those kind of things. Like for me, it's .NET and React primarily. Sorry, C Sharp, .NET, and React. But once you've kind of settled on your like core like foundational skills that you can use to make almost anything with, then I think you have to pick what you're going to like specialize in as kind of like a sub category off that, like a subspecialty almost. So right, you have your language, right? And I'm not talking about specializing in something like that's part of that language or framework. Like I'm not talking about being an expert in Entity Framework in .NET, and I'm not talking about being an expert in React Router in React or Redux or something like that. I'm talking about an entirely different kind of like sub technology that would connect to your core framework. So a prime example of this is RabbitMQ. It connects to any language framework, whatever it is. It operates on AMQ, the AMQ protocol, so Advanced Message Queuing Protocol. And RabbitMQ specifically is 091, I think, standard, and I think there might be a plugin for 1.0. But RabbitMQ is basically a message broker system that can coordinate messaging in a distributed system. So if I send a message up to, or if I publish a message to a RabbitMQ exchange, it can be routed to a queue, and then I can register a consumer to listen to subscribe to that queue and receive a message off the queue. And the queue in RabbitMQ stores a reference to the data that can either be saved on disk or in memory in RabbitMQ. And there's a lot of configuration with that. So I'm trying to get good at RabbitMQ. I may have just said something that might have been wrong. It's possible, but I'm still learning. So, but that's the kind of subspecialty that I think is vitally important, is to pick, beyond your core foundational skills, pick like a niche technology that you want to get good at, that you can see how you can plug that in. Another one might be GraphQL. GraphQL is getting really, really popular, and it might not be bad to learn. So if you can make a personal project that uses GraphQL, and then obviously use whatever your core tech stack is, whether it's Java, C Sharp, whatever it is, just obviously use that to make whatever you need. But then use GraphQL to, and then set up your endpoints, and then create your queries and make a personal project. That's why I picked RabbitMQ for my engine system that I started making last November, I think October, November, because I want to learn it, and not because I really needed to use it, although I do need it now because of how much data we're sending through the whole system. But I just honestly, I just want to learn it. And there's so many of those kind of niche technologies that you can learn and be really good at that look really, really good on a resume and that are good to talk about. And honestly, it's important once you kind of pick your core tech stack, and then you kind of pick your subspecialty of like a niche technology, it's important that you get good at talking about those things, right? Honestly, I would sit down with somebody or by yourself, whatever it is, and just practice talking through your personal project. Practice talking about a system, because that's the stuff that's going to be important in the interview, is how well you can talk through your problem and how well you can talk about a system. That's just the way it is sometimes, right? If you can't talk about it well, you might not do as well in the interview. But if you can talk about it fluently, if you can express why you may pick a certain technology, what the pros and cons are, how you would implement it, and how let's say picking RabbitMQ will decide later architectural decisions in your system. Just things like that. And from there, you could talk about, well, maybe you don't want to use RabbitMQ. Maybe you want to use a cloud provider's solution, right? Maybe you want to use AWS's simple queuing service. And here are the pros and cons of using that. Here's the cost associated with using AWS. It's going to be very high. or Azure, whatever it is, or you're going to use, or you're not even going to use queues. You're going to go to who even knows. But it's important that you pick one and be able to talk about it well, and then list that pretty high in your resume. Because once you get in that interview, especially if it's for any level beyond like a junior developer position, it's going to be important that you can talk through systems and talk through how you go about thinking about how one API may interact with another API, or how a microservice may tie into a monolith, and how you can coordinate messaging between those things. It's just a common thing that's going to be brought up. But I look back on it for me, and honestly, this is a big reason why I'm doing these videos, just to hopefully get better and improve at talking through systems and everything like that when we do more of our system design oriented videos. But I would try to stick with something that's real pertinent to what you're trying to do. So if you see a resume or a job listing that has like kind of, obviously beyond your core tech stack, that has a technology that's listed on there that you don't feel like you're real competent in, just put it in your personal project. Just get really good at it and just read as much as you can. Honestly, reading is like the life hack. Reading is like a cheat code for life. It really is. You can learn you go to the library and just check out every book. You can learn whatever you need. It's incredible. I mean, so whatever technology you want to learn, there's a free book out there you can learn. Now, a lot of books are bad. A lot of books are just like, they're not exactly the most exciting. They're pretty dry. But at least I've noticed that regardless of how dry the content is, once you have a personal project kind of in the works, it doesn't matter how dry the content is, because you're thinking about, how can I use this? How can I put this in my project? And that's what kind of adds excitement to the book's material. And I found that to be real helpful in reading programming books, because let's face it, if you ever try to read documentation, it's like the most boring. It's like, I mean, you can't get much more drier than reading documentation, right? People say read the docs. It's like, okay, but can we do something more exciting? Books, I feel like, at least are a little bit of a buffer between just reading docs and just, watching tutorials. Books still force you to think about it the way you would when you read, but a lot of them help you to think, like actually think about it, because it's a little bit more, books are a little bit more conversational. They're a little more, they explain it sometimes in a way that is a little more helpful, I think, at least in my experience with some books. Now, some books are really bad. Some programming books literally just like have a huge code snippet, and then like, oh yeah, just put this, and that does this, and but it's like, wait, what does any of that code mean? Now, it's a real fine line, but I found like specialty books like that are on more niche technologies. Like I'm reading a RabbitMQ book right now. Oh, it's great. It's super high quality, but because it's so specialized, it has so much assumed knowledge that you know how to connect to and use RabbitMQ. So it kind of doesn't have to do all that, which is nice, because then it can focus on the real specifics of what RabbitMQ is and how to set certain properties on the message frame or things like that. So it's real interesting. In programming books, sometimes they try to be too general, where it's like they'll start and say, here's how the World Wide Web came about. It's like, wait, what? I don't really want to read 30 pages on computer history. You talk about dry. And some programming books kind of fall in that pitfall of like they try to almost be too broad, and they try to assume like nothing, and that makes it very hard because they try to put way too much content out there. The ones that are a little more targeted, honestly, are sometimes better. And it's hard. It's very very hard to find quality programming books. It really is. And people kind of knock on like books, like say, "Oh, but they're out of date by the time they're published." It's like, yeah, but I don't really focus on it. Just read. It just gets you into practice. It'll help you, and honestly, I think it'll help you actually pick what subspecialty you want to focus on. Because if you go to publishers' websites, you can kind of see like what kind of content they're publishing recently and what their preview books are like the books that are going to be coming out. What are they on? And it's kind of fun to go and like look through to see like what are actively published, like published on topics. And a lot of times you'll see one that like I saw one the other day. It was like um, what was it? It was like I forget what was the name. It was like drug discovery in programming, so like making medicine. Like was it medicine discovery? I don't know. But it was talking about uh, genetic sequencing in Python. Crazy topic. Like it's not applicable to me in anything I do at work, but honestly, I might read that just because that's like to have like some basic knowledge of like how that stuff like how we make like uh, medicines or anything like that will be super cool. But you never know like where that could lead. So there's a lot of books like that. Honestly, the Rabbit MQ book that I have was kind of like I was just looking through something and I saw, wait a second, they made a Rabbit MQ book. I didn't know that, so I got it, and it's turned out to be extremely helpful. Just helping me, because a lot of it is just the language, right? Getting and understanding the language around whatever topic you're trying to learn. Sometimes it's like you know what you're trying to say, but you don't know how to express it in the right way. Like you don't know the correct terminology to use. So like somebody might say like you might I'm not thinking of an example, but that's kind of what. Hopefully that makes sense. So try to think of like a good like subspecialty or like niche technology that you want to focus on, and just try to learn as much as you can about it. You never know where that may lead. So I'll see you in the next one.